Welcome, listeners, to a realm where shadows dance and whispers echo. I'm your host, Rick Clifton, and this is Quills and Chills, the podcast that brings you face to face with the masterminds behind the macabre. In each episode, we journey into the minds of horror writers and filmmakers to uncover the secrets lurking within their tales of terror. From classic tales to modern nightmares, we'll traverse the corridors of the human psyche and unravel the threads of dread that keep us turning the pages or sitting out there in the dark. Welcome to Quills and Chills. Hello and welcome back to Quills and Chills. I'm your host, Rick Clifton, and today I am talking with author Jill Baguchinsky.
Good
Jill,
pronunciation on that. You
did I get it?
Yes, you get it perfect.
Yes. Yay, perfect. So Jill grew up on a barrier island off the coast of Southwest Florida. And as a result of that, she has dodged many hurricanes while also devouring many Stephen King novels. And her latest queer young adult YA horror novel, So Witches We Became, is inspired by that experience. And so I am actually very happy to have her here with me today. So welcome to the show, Jill.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Got it. Before we get into the specifics of the book, which, as I told you just before we started, I just loved it. I'm a big fan of witches and anything queer YA, I'm all in. So you have me from the get-go. But before we get into this, I'd love to just get to know a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I really want to know about you growing up on these barrier islands and all of that.
Well, I did. I grew up on Marco Island off the coast of Florida, and it is a barrier island, and those are literally, nature creates those to shield the mainland from hurricanes and things. They take the brunt of it. So I've always kind of wondered why it seems like a good idea to live on them, but I did grow up on one. And I lived through a lot of hurricanes, and I was a very spooky kid in general. Growing up in Florida, I went to Disney a lot, and I started going on the Haunted Mansion when I was like 4 and fell in love with that. And my whole life has just been Haunted Mansion, and then next year Ghostbusters came out, and then Gremlins, and then I was into scary stories to tell in the dark, and just like I said, spooky kid the whole way through.
I love it. I love it. How did you actually venture into writing?
I think I just was always kind of a storyteller. Even when I didn't think that I could maybe do it professionally, I still was writing stories. I had characters in my head, and I figured out that the characters are just going to keep talking to me either way, so I might as well give them something productive to do with their time and with mine. So
there you go. I love that. What's your process when you're writing? Are you somebody that just sort of dives in with both feet, or are you like an obsessive planner, or is it a little bit of both? I mean, what's that process like?
Yeah, I'm like the opposite of a planner. I'm a total right by the seat of my pants type. I have done a lot of NaNoWriMo projects where you write so much, you're at 50,000 words in a month. And I just kind of use that to throw everything in the world at a new story idea and see what sticks and what doesn't. So I let myself make a huge dumpster fire of a mess for my first draft, and I just know I can clean it up later. So yeah, my first drafts usually, they're not even recognizable if you've read the final version of the book. But it's such a fun way to just get all kinds of ideas out there, and sometimes things come out that otherwise I don't think I would have come up with if I was trying to write from an outline the whole time.
I had a college professor that convinced me to try free flow writing, and it wasn't until I used to love to write. I used to read a lot, and still do obviously, but I would want to write, but I would always get stuck because I'm that person that always wants to write it and then go back and fix it before I can move on to the next sentence or the next paragraph. And she convinced me, told me about this free flow writing thing. It's like, just write it. Don't worry about the punctuation. Don't worry if it makes sense. Just write it. And it took a little while to get used to, but boy, like you said, it just opens up like the floodgates. And once you get going, then all that stuff, it just goes. So
yeah, it frees you up so much, because I'm usually very much of a perfectionist, like toxic perfectionist. So it's really difficult for me to just say, okay, that doesn't make sense, but I will come back and fix it later. It's okay that it can be a mess right now. So that's hard to do. But once I can get past that whole perfectionism thing, it works really well for me.
The other part of that too is I found that sometimes I'll do something, I'm like, oh, I don't like that, but I'm gonna keep going, and then I'm like, oh, but now it's inspired something else later on, so now I can keep it. So it
Sometimes it's like, oh, that's why I put that in at the time. I had a plan for it the whole
yes.
time. I'm so clever.
See,
It's like, yep.
yeah, you and I are a lot alike in that regard. So you touched on this a little bit in the beginning, but I always love to know sort of how people find horror. As with you as a child, I found it, and I have just as I've been very passionate about it most of my life, and I'm always intrigued how people find their unique path to this genre and what sort of inspired you to start writing in horror.
Well, like I said, I was always into kind of spooky, scary things, and that led to, scary stories to tell in the dark and some of the earlier R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike YA horror books. And then I just jumped right into Stephen King at the age of like 10 or 11, like so many horror writers. I mean, he has, warped generations now. And, I hope he's proud of that because it's really cool. I think Stephen King's his influence is just throughout my writing. I would not be the person I am if I hadn't started reading his books when I did. And I got so many different things out of them when I was 11 than when I go back now and reread them. And it's kind of really interesting to go back and look at that and just kind of compare what I saw in Pet Sematary at 11 versus now. Because when I was 11, I went, I don't even see the horror in this. I can take my pets if they die and go bury them over here and they come back. Wait, that's great.
That's awesome, right?
Okay, yeah. So they come back a little weird and a little smelly and a little kind of dead and maybe evil, but it's like I already had a cat like that. So it's like I don't think I would have been able to tell a difference if I had taken old Lou and buried him somewhere and he had come back like that. He would have been the same cat. So yeah, I was just like, this is a great idea. And I read Cujo and was just horrified because I'm such an animal person. And the whole way through, I'm going, he just wanted to be a good boy. This is not fair. I actually rewrote the ending of Cujo in my old copy of Cujo and did it's awful. It's one of these, it was just a dream and everybody's fine. But, I was, again, like 11. So I had to do that to make myself feel better. So yeah, I was stumbling through a lot of Stephen King very early, and I went on to Anne Rice. I had my romantic vampire phase in high school, like so many people do. And yeah, I always come back to horror. I'll jump into other genres for a while. I'll read, I'll play around in them, but I always seem to come back to horror. It's like my home. So.
Well, I love it. Do you remember by chance what your first Stephen King book was? Mine was Cujo, by the way.
Oh, no. I think mine was Pet Sematary. Because
wow.
I remember that a friend of mine was telling me she wanted to read Carrie. And her mother took the book away from her and said, no, you're way too young to be reading Stephen King. And I heard this and said, okay, I've never read any Stephen King. I don't know much about him, but now I want to read him because somebody said you shouldn't read him. So I told my friend, my mom doesn't pay attention to what I'm reading, so I can get some Stephen King. So I probably got it and then, let her borrow it too. But I think I went for Pet Sematary because, again, animal person, say, I don't see anything wrong with this.
Well, and cats in general, they just have that attitude. So really, what's the difference?
They absolutely do. Yeah. I mean, I'd just be out there with every single one of my animals. Like, does it work with beta fish? Because I would like that too.
Evil fish. There's a fun story. Last question before we dive in. Do you have a favorite? I mean, growing up on a barrier island, I would think there would have to be quite a few, but do you have a favorite scary moment from your childhood that you remember?
I maybe going through Hurricane Andrew, because that was the first hurricane that, even though it came across the state from the East Coast, so it wasn't so much a barrier island sort of storm, but that was the first one where I was really old enough to be aware that, okay, yeah, this is kind of dangerous. We lived in houses at the time that my dad had built because he was a contractor. So we knew that the houses were strong. We knew what had gone into building them. And we knew that, okay, the house is going to stand. The roof's probably not going to fly off. But Andrew was the first one where I saw like an entire screen cage just fly right off the house and go down the canal. And I went, okay, wait, this is actually really creepy. This is not like when I was little and we would, mom and dad would go buy extra wine and beer and have my aunt and uncle come over for a hurricane party. This is actually kind of
Kind of
dangerous.
serious. Yeah.
Yeah, there are trees getting uprooted and part of our house just flew away. And maybe I don't like this anymore.
So, well, let's talk about this amazing book. Let's talk about hurricanes and, scary moments. So, Witches We Became, is it actually inspired by your experience, I understand, with Hurricane Irma, is it?
Yes, Hurricane Irma in 2017. That was the first storm to come up and hit Marco directly in my lifetime. They always seem to kind of skirt around us before. And my dad had always said that's because Marco is the island of no storms. He named it that, or he came up with that, or someone came up with that and he stole it, maybe. But they never actually hit us. And then my dad passed away in May 2017. And in September 2017, a storm came up and
Oh,
directly
wow.
hit Marco. So
Wow.
it was, yeah, there was many levels of trauma going on with that because I always kind of depended on my dad's knowledge of hurricanes and his confidence about them. He was the kind of guy who'd be out in the eye of the storm in the middle of the night, walking around, looking at the neighborhood, checking it out, carrying a beer. The cops would come by and say, "Sir, you have to get back in. The storm's not over." He'd say, "Oh, it's the eye. It's fine." But so going through a storm that was such a direct hit right after losing him was a different kind of trauma. And
Wow.
I like to deal with trauma by writing about it. It helps me process. So I knew I wanted to write something having to do with a hurricane. And with that slow creeping dread feeling of watching a storm every day on the maps and tracking it. And it keeps getting closer and closer and closer. And there's nothing really you can do except evacuate if you need to, or hunker down if you need to, and prepare, but there's not a lot of control there. So I was like, I need to write a storm because I need to control one of these babies.
Well, you did that in a big way here. So, so tell us a little bit about what the book is about.
Okay, it's about a group of high schoolers. They're high school seniors, and so it's their last spring break before they all go off in separate directions to college. And they have the opportunity to spend spring break on this private barrier island. It's off the east coast of Florida, but it's just an absolute dream spring break. A couple of weird things start happening on the island early on, but it's stuff that's easy to shrug off. It's like, okay, that was a creepy moment, whatever. But then some unexpected extra guests show up on the island and things start going haywire, and this dream vacation turns into a nightmare. All of a sudden, the kids are all trapped on the island. There's a toxic, mysterious mist that has shown up blocking the bridge. That's the only way to drive or walk off the island. There is something lurking in the water, and it's creepy and hungry, and they definitely can't they can't swim or take a boat or anything. And they have to figure out what's going on the island, why they are connected to whatever's going on with the island and the island's history. They've all brought their own secrets that gradually come out as the story goes on. And they basically just have to figure out how to save themselves and save each other and what the heck is going on this island, and what is
Right.
trying to eat us? Why is this island suddenly hungry?
I mean, and wow, I just love the way that whole story comes together. But you touched on it a little bit here in that Nell, and not only Nell's our main character, but not only Nell, but also her friends bring all these different secrets to the island, and those secrets actually, I'm trying to remain spoiler free, so I'll be a little vague, but they actually play a pretty critical role, I think, in the story overall. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about each of these characters and their backstories, obviously without spoilers as much as you can.
Okay, I'll try to avoid the spoilers. Nell is the main character, like you said, and she has a history of some traumatic things going on. She has sleep paralysis as a child, and she has this creepy shadow person that comes in her room at night, and she figures out that she can control it by singing to it. So she has this ritual where she plays her mom's old ukulele and she sings it this little song that it likes, and it kind of that music soothes the savage beast. And so she learns how to start dealing with fear and trauma and things at a young age, and then she starts putting that into writing because she is also a horror writer. I definitely put that element of myself in her. And yeah, and then there's a whole backstory with her very complicated friendship with her best friend Harper, who is now also on the island. And where they become such close friends and then they sort of drift apart, and how upsetting that is for Nell. I think it's something that all of us have gone through, where, we had a really close friend and then things just we're not really connecting anymore, and you have to mourn that. It's almost, it's like mourning the end of a relationship, and we usually think of those as such separate things. But Nell is kind of going through that, seeing if it's possible to reconnect with this friend that used to be her absolute best friend, but has kind of gone off in a different direction. And then they also have their friend Dia, who brings secrets of her own, and the three of them together they become something bigger than they are separately. And that's part of, one of the themes of the book, is that if we support each other and we're able to have people that we can share our secrets with, that makes us all stronger together.
I agree. I think the female friendship and the aftermath of some of the trauma that each of the characters have sort of not only survived but brought with them, I think that it's pretty prominent. And you even talked about that a little bit in the author's note at the end. And I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about, and I love that you did it, but talk a little bit about why it was so important to explore these topics, and especially in such an amazing setting in the way that you did. So, the way you brought them to be.
Well, when I was writing this book and starting to draft it and saying I'm going to write a hurricane book, I eventually realized that, okay, I'm writing a hurricane story, but the hurricane isn't the villain. This isn't like a survival thriller where the kids are just having to get away from this monster storm. The hurricane, it's a force of nature. Hurricanes aren't good. They're not bad. They just are.
They are. Yeah.
And so I needed to find the real villain. And at the time, society was just constantly talking about things like, oh, it's just locker room talk, or, oh, boys will be boys. And the more I heard that, the angrier I got. I was just filled with rage over all these excuses. And meanwhile, I thought about friends of mine and people I know, and so many of them have told me stories where they have been like, oh, this person did this to me, but it wasn't a big deal. It was, but these are all assaults or harassments, or these terrible things that shouldn't be happening, and we end up kind of going, oh, it wasn't a big deal. My own mother had to stab a man on the subway through his hand to get him to let go of her once in New York back in the day, and she will tell you every time, oh, it was no big deal. I just took my bracelet and stabbed it right through his hand and he let me go. It's like, that shouldn't be happening in the first place. So I wanted to kind of push back against that whole boys will be boys mentality, where we somehow let certain people off scot-free and then we blame victims and things. So I wanted to kind of bring the power back to the people who need to have that power and who have had that power taken away.
You're exactly right. And I love that. I often think about the story or the sort of image in our brain of kids when they're even in elementary school, and the guy sitting behind the girl pulling her pigtails and things like that. And it's like, he only does it because he likes you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not how you show you like somebody. Sorry, but that's just, we can't normalize that. So,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. It just tells you, oh, well, he's just, it leads you to think he's abusing me because he likes me, or he's treating me like trash because he likes me. So he just doesn't know any other way to
there's
show me
something
this.
inherently wrong about that.
Yes.
So it's just, I get it.
Oh yeah. So I remember that when I was 3 in preschool, and there was one little boy every day who would push me over and break my jewelry. And I was told, well, he does it because he likes you. And that was so confusing to me because I was 3 years old.
It's so great. Can I hit him in the side of the head with my lunchbox?
Oh my God. It was like, I guess I just have to put up with this because he likes me. He got expelled from preschool. I mean, how bad do you have to be to get expelled from preschool? And
right.
I was just so confused by the whole thing. I like to say I got my bad boy era out of the way early, because when he got thrown out, I cried, and I didn't really understand why I was crying. But it's like I was sad for him, and like, okay, that was my bad boy crush or something. I don't know. But, but why tell little girls that, oh, he's doing that because he likes you? No, he's doing that because he's being a jerk.
Yeah, exactly. He's an asshole. Sorry, I'll bleep that out. So I want to talk about the island a little bit, and it's got this. I mean, I guess some people could say it's tragic, but I actually thought it was quite powerful. Honestly, it's got this curse that comes with it, and again, I don't want no spoilers too much, but I love the history of the island, and so without spoiling too much for the readers, I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about those elements that brought this together, because I just loved it so much.
Thank you. Oh, I'm trying to think of what I can say without doing too many spoilers. There is a story early on in the book that is presented that is, there's a local legend about some island in the area, and these women who were being persecuted and hunted as witches end up escaping to this island. And it's just this old local lore. They do something, they disappear, something happens, and it's like a legend, it's lore, so all different versions of it, and it's not really clear. And then it turns out some version of this maybe really did happen, and maybe this is the island where that happened, and the way they figured out how to try to protect themselves and try to get back at the people who were trying to hurt them maybe it got a little out of control eventually. And yeah, I'm not sure exactly how to explain it without going into too many spoilers, but yeah,
What if we twist it towards the title? Because I just loved it. I actually wrote it down when I read it. I just loved how, I'll let you set it up, but how you got to the title here. I just love that little twist and turn of it.
The women in the original legend, they weren't witches. They just were women who had different talents and different abilities. And they would get called witches. They would get accused of witchcraft. Like, oh, this one is too good at growing these plants. It's like she has a special power. She must be, dancing with the devil at night or something. And it was just such a common thing back in the day for women to be accused of witchcraft. They were scapegoats. Oh, my cow died. Well, my neighbor looked at me funny yesterday, so she must have put a spell on my cow. So she must be a witch. And so they keep calling these women witches. And so the quote that comes up is, they called us witches, so witches we became. So they actually pull their power from all those accusations. And it's pretty much like, okay, if you're going to keep calling me this, then okay, that's exactly what I'll be.
I love that so much. When I read that, I think I was on an airplane when I read that, and I may have audibly let out a little yes. Everybody's like, what is happening? So it's great. The book is described as a young adult feminist spin on Stephen King's The Mist. And as you were talking earlier about Stephen King and your love of Stephen King, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that aspect of it. And again, we'll just
okay.
I'll let you avoid spoilers as much as possible. So, but if something happens, I can always edit it.
Okay. Well, I didn't actually start out trying to write, a spin on The Mist. It just, one of the things that I came up with was, okay, there's this weird haze on the island. And I think that's pretty much where the comparison comes from, is that there's a weird haze, there's a mist, and there's something inside it. And that something is terrifying and hungry. And that's pretty much where the comparison ends. It's mostly like a comp title, in publishing. So it's, I wasn't sitting there going, okay, I got to get this element of the mist in, I got to get that. It also has some elements of like The Raft, the short story with and I wasn't going for like a direct comp to The Mist, but it does work. I think it's, it's just very different dynamics. You have a group of teenagers stuck on a barrier island that's very different from a group of, a more diverse adult kids, different people group, in a supermarket in Maine. Things are going to go very differently, and the themes are different. And so it's basically just, yes, there is a mist and there is something in the mist, and some of that lines up. If you like that element of the mist, this has that too.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that in the beginning, there's definitely those similarities, but then suddenly it very quickly goes in its own direction, in its own path, in a very lovely way. So, the story, So Witches We Became, it features a very diverse and very queer cast of characters, and I absolutely love that. So as a gay man, I say thank you for making queer characters front and center here, and in such a powerful way. What is your approach towards writing characters in general, or specifically in this story, to ensure very authentic representation?
Oh, I just did my best to really listen to their voices and get to know them and try not to rely on any kind of stereotypical information about them. I just wanted them all to be their own characters, and their sexual orientation went with that, their race went with that. Just they all came together pretty much as they are, and I figure that's just the way they're supposed to be. Yeah, my mom asked me at one point, well, why did you make this character bi? And I'm like, because he is. It's not a reason. It's not like a calculation, like, okay, I want to check off this box and this box and this box. It's just kind of like, okay, this is how the characters showed up in my head, and I think it works.
And you know what I loved about that character, Harry? What I loved about him is that he was bi, coming out of a relationship with another man and developing a relationship with a female. And usually I feel like I've always seen it the other way around. And I really loved that. It really felt very special to me in a way. So
Oh, thank you.
that was great.
Harry's my son. He's like one of my very favorites. He's my cinnamon roll. He's just, yeah. So I always like hearing anything nice about Harry.
And I, again, won't spoil too much, but I love that he gets his moment in the end too. So I thought that was really great. So,
yeah, that was important to me to make sure we kept that. Yes. Mm.
So in this story overall, it's about a group of women that discover their unique gifts and how to use them to create a very powerful spell. So my question for you is, at what point in your life did you realize that the profound impact that words or actions can have?
Oh boy. I think it was when my last book, Mammoth, came out, and I had somebody come up to me and tell me that it had changed their life. It had changed the way they felt about themselves, and it was just what they needed in that moment. And we're friends now, and I keep following her, and she's a pretty big influencer and stuff these days, doing all kinds of body positivity and plus size clothing. And I'm so beyond proud to know that my book had a little part in, nudging her toward this wonderful present day that she has built for herself. So it's just amazing. Yeah, it's
Yay.
I love it so much.
All right. So is there a pivotal moment in the story here, or a scene or something from the book that you feel like you would want your readers to look forward to? I have one, and I'd love to share it before you do. For me, there were a lot, without a doubt. There were for sure a lot. But probably the one that jumps out at me is when Christopher dives into the water, just because that unlocks a whole level of fear for me that comes back from my childhood and diving into a lake full of snakes. So
oh
yeah,
no. Oh no.
yeah. So yeah. So that was a big moment for me. I was like, oh yeah, no, can't do that. So
Yeah, I was going to say pretty much the same exact moment, because I feel like what happens with that kind of is a turning point and really shows the characters, just how serious this is. So, yeah, and I enjoyed writing that scene so much because I'm no major fan of Christopher. So.
And to clarify for all the listeners out there, he does not dive into a lake full of snakes. It's just that's the what I relate it to in my childhood. So anyway. All right. So what do you hope that readers are going to take away from this book, So Witches We Became, in terms of its message about power and about friendship and even about confronting one's past?
I think I would love for people to take away that it's important to, if you're able to share things with other people that you trust, to be able to let someone else carry a little of this burden. If you have a secret that you feel like, oh, I don't want to burden somebody else with this. If you have friends who you trust and you feel like you can lean on them, do that. And when they need to do the same thing, be there to listen to them, because you're so much stronger when you have that extra support. And I say this as a complete introvert who would, move into the middle of nowhere in the woods in a little cabin and be a hermit very happily. But even I know that sometimes you do need to connect with other people, and it helps everybody involved. And it's good to have a little circle of people like that you can trust.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So Jill, what are you working on now? Are there any other big projects, anything you can share with us?
I do have something else I'm working on, and it's one of these things where I can't talk about it just yet. So I am going dark again. I am getting spooky again, but that's about all I can say, and I can't wait until I can say more.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. So I'll keep an eye out. So I'm a big fan. So the book is called So Witches We Became. It is available everywhere now. And as we always like to say here at Quills and Chills, please always support your local bookstores whenever possible.
Mm-hmm.
So Jill, how can our audience find you on social media?
I'm on Instagram at Jill Writes Books. And I also have my own website, of course, and it's, JillBaguchinsky.com. It's very short and easy to spell. So
I'll put it up on the screen too. Yeah. So it really has it. It'll be in the notes. So.
But yeah, right. Socials, I'm mainly on Insta these days. So
perfect. Well, Jill, thank you so much for coming and talking to me today. I got to tell you, I really love this book, and I'm very excited that we got a chance to sit down and talk. I didn't really get a chance to talk to your buddy there, but hi.
That's bony legs. Yep. Some people call it Halloween decor. To me, it's just year-round decor. So yeah.
Exactly. It's everyday decor. Yeah. So mm-hmm. I love it. All right. That's it. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching and listening.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on another episode of Quills and Chills. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the mysterious and the haunted. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to support us by subscribing on your preferred podcast platform and leaving us a rating or review, because your feedback helps keep those chills running down both our spines. And feel free to share the show with your favorite fellow horror enthusiasts. Also, if you guys have any spooky stories, strange encounters, or paranormal experiences of your own, I'd love to hear them. Reach out to me on social media or email me at quillsandchillspodcast@gmail.com. Who knows? Your story might end up on a very special episode. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I will see you back here next time on Quills and Chills. Bye, y'all.